How much choice should parents have in deciding if their students should be retained? Today, we are going to talk about whether we should let states decide if a child is retained or their parents, and why retention just might be the answer to saving education in America. I'm Angie
And I'm
Stevens,
Candace Valverde.
and we are here to keep it real, teachers talk. So
Right.
if you're following education news, you've seen that Mississippi is having an amazing success story. They've gone from, even though they have the highest child poverty in the entire country, they are quickly moving to mid scores in reading and math, and their third graders are showing some of the highest top gains, especially in children of poverty in the entire country. And what else do you want to add to that,
It's
Candace?
amazing. And so, because of their success, other states such as West Virginia have put in place these similar laws so that they can also retain the students in third grade. And I think historically, that retaining a student past kindergarten doesn't happen very often in America. And it's really, really frowned upon. Like, you can push for it as a parent, but it's really discouraged by many districts. They're going to be socially ostracized if they're held back and their friends all go on.
Yeah. And so because of that, retention used to be more popular, like in the 70s, it used to be more common. But because of concerns about being socially ostracized, they quit using it as much, except for Mississippi brought it back. And so looking at a whole bunch of data saying that the prison systems are completely filled with people who were not on on reading level at the third grade, it's saying we're doing a disservice. If we're just pushing the kids through each grade level, they are more likely to end up prison to pipeline. So Mississippi,
Right.
who is had the worst levels in education for over like about a decade ago, highest child poverty still today in 2023. You can check out a New York Times article from this month.
Highest teen
Yeah,
pregnancy.
highest teen
Yeah.
pregnancy. They still have all those problems, but they've been able to completely start to reverse the trend. And I'm going to argue that the reason they're doing that is they are holding kids back in third grade. And my argument is that I think this is great. I think it's wonderful. I don't think it sends the right message to students and parents if we keep allowing kids to move on without getting the basic literacy skills that they need to be successful. And I think it causes really big problems for teachers that are unnecessary. So if you're in 8th grade and I'm teaching English in 8th grade and I have 10th grade reading levels, and literally last year I had 2 pre-Ks who could not even sound out their letters, who are in an 8th grade classroom, how am I going to continue to push my higher kids to get them ready for college when I have kids who can't even sound out their sounds? So I think this is wonderful. I am all about it. And so I'm going to argue the position. Let's do it. Let's create more accountability at the lower grades and get people really on board with you need to be on reading level at the 3rd grade. What do you think?
And so you think that that should be all the district's choice as to who's held back?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm going to argue, I'm going to argue that it's gotten too much now. The gaps that we're and I'm going to take our friend Kim, she's not here, but she talks about in math how almost impossible it is in math when you have literally kids who can barely add and add and subtract in her 6th grade classes.
Yeah.
So it's too
Those
much for her.
foundational skills. But I really do think that the parent should have a say in that, and it shouldn't, like, the district shouldn't have that final decision. The district can recommend it, but the parent is the final.
Why should the parent have that right?
Okay, so I don't know. I might be influenced by my own child's experience in
That's good.
school.
Yeah.
Where in the early grades that she didn't perform at school the same way she did at home. So I knew that she was much more capable than she was getting credit for in school. And so I wasn't like saying, oh no, that can't possibly be my child because my child, but like I knew she was able to do a lot more. So I feel like with some of our students, that's the case. And it can be for a variety of reasons, but you know,
So they're not like showing us what they can do. So you're arguing that they're like on grade level in one setting, but then it's not transferring over to the other setting.
yeah. So that's why the parent should be part of that decision-making process. Because, you know, if she were held back, she would be
I
in.
like the idea that the
Yeah.
parent should have input, but one of the things that I think is a kind of a side problem in America that we're not talking about, which is a lot of kids in that situation are being pulled out and homeschooled, which has good and bad situations.
Right. Yeah.
But until the district can provide, like, there's no way the district can provide adequate staffing for teachers for holding people back if they can't look at the actual need and address the need. And the problem is that the taxpayer is paying for this. And I hate to get really raw here, but the taxpayer is paying for the teachers' salaries to advance the students so they can be globally competitive. So in a world where China is becoming more hostile, in a world where Russia is attacking the Ukraine, where AI is taking over, for our country to stay on the cutting edge, our public schools have got to push our kids into the next level. And if we're supposed to be doing that at the exact same time we're teaching letter sounds, what are we losing? I think there's a really critical discussion to be had about districts need to be positioned to accelerate the, their students so that they can meet the demands of political polarization, climate change, going to Mars, AI. And I don't see it happening in the current system. And in Mississippi, where they were forcing people to stay back, they were also addressing the needs of poverty. So what's interesting is the kids who were in the highest poverty ranks were then able to read and able to excel. And even though they stayed back 1 or 2 grades to accomplish that, then once they had those foundational skills, then they continued to stay up with their classes. They moved on. They just needed more practice.
Mm.
But I
Yeah.
think you speak to a really important point about the stigma of it.
I think, yeah. And, you know, that's always been a lot of the reason why we don't do that, which doesn't mean it's right, because clearly our educational system needs a lot of change. Like,
Yeah.
we are not doing well. I don't know what it needs, but it can't keep doing the same thing. Our kids are not the same. Our communities are not the same. And so with so many different needs, we need to make sure that those are addressed and put forth.
I think about like horse training a lot. And I mean, and take it or not, but if you have an owner sitting on the fence telling me that horse is ready for the next skill, and I push that next skill, I'll freak that horse out or buck it off, or it'll lose its confidence. So if a kid is being pushed along and a student and they want to learn, then by the time they get to 8th grade, if they're still reading at the 2nd or 3rd grade level, they're embarrassed, they're masking, they're sometimes turning to violence, sometimes turning to like destroying property, all because they've been pushed. And so my concern is that if we don't slow down, if we don't make it acceptable, and I'm arguing that districts create multiple pathways. I think districts need to make multiple pathways that are acceptable for students to move at their own pace, and that it should be about skill mastery, and get rid of this stupid grading thing and be like, we know our sounds, we understand fluency, we know what a prepositional phrase is, we
So
know
kind of like competency, where
skill.
they're meeting
Yeah.
goals, and if once they do that, they're ready.
Yeah. But
So
I like
then
what
if we were to hold a student back, say in 3rd grade, and then it took them like 6 months to a year to get back to their grade level, which like age appropriate grade level. So then would that mean that they would start 4th grade or 5th grade next year?
I mean, I feel like you're
Not
right
work.
about, I mean, you don't want to leave parents out. Parents need to be part of the equation.
Mhm.
I just get concerned that it can be a coddling experience, and that's why they're sometimes not on grade level to begin with, is because there's not enough rigor. And so when that more rigorous teacher needs to apply the expectation and be really consistent. That is what the student needs to master the skill. And for some, it's a little harder. So the consistency needs to be more prevalent. And with modern parents, I'm not sure they value that consistency and have an understanding for the importance of, no, not all. There's tons of amazing parents out there, but I guess what I'm saying is, like, when I'm very old, but when I was a kid and my parents were kids and my grandparents were kids, there was kind of an understanding, you guys, life is uncomfortable. And when you're learning a new skill, it's going to be hard and it's going to be difficult. And that's part of it.
Mhm.
And I don't see an accepting of that as much, that it's okay, my kid's going to be uncomfortable as they learn this skill. It's going to be hard for them to read this. They're going to have to sit down and so I guess I'm saying there might need to be a stronger policy push from the districts that this is the standard. If you haven't met it, you can't move on unless you can come up with an alternate path or.
Okay. So then what is it that they're using? Like, what support do these teachers have in the classrooms to really target students? So I saw that in West Virginia's new law that they put in place, they have like those supports. There's MTSS.
So what is that law? So
okay, let me pull it up.
It's for third grade retention, right? So I was just reading.
For third grade retention.
Mhm.
So it says that, and it's all legal speak, so I'm going to do my best here. They have a multi-tiered system of support for early literacy and numeracy in kindergarten through grade 3, pre-service and in-service teacher training, notice to parent or guardian, third grade retention policy with exceptions, and interventions continuing in 4th grade for students below proficient.
And I'm reading, so lots of states are starting this. That's why we're debating it, because we thought it would be fun. And we're open to change. So change our minds in the comments if we've missed something.
Please.
But I'm reading an article called Third Grade Retention Laws, What You Need to Know by Andrew M.I. Lee, and he's a JD. And he's saying that it's becoming a trend that more and more states are saying, if you haven't passed your proficiencies at 3rd grade, that you need to repeat the grade. And there are some exceptions that we want to lay out that both Candace and I agree on that are not up for debate. And that is, a student with an IEP would definitely not be repeating. So if there was an IEP in place, they're definitely going to continue to have access to education at the best possible way. A student with a 504 would also be under that understanding. And they at all the states that have this, you can participate in summer school. So if you're not on grade level,
form of intervention.
That's an intervention. If you're not on grade level in 3rd grade, you can do summer school, and you just have to do summer school until you get where you need to be. And then you can also participate in a special reading program at school.
Oh, so they would pull you out of the typical public school setting and put you in this. Would that be with like literacy coaches?
Yeah. So in Mississippi, I know they use literacy coaches. So these are the things all states who've passed this, the one like you're talking about, this 3rd grade retention law, have the exception for the ones we just read. And Mississippi has the intervention, the literacy intervention. And I read this really great article, which may be even more important than holding them back, but it's the combination. But the superintendent of public schools for Mississippi, she hires the literacy coaches for the districts. She doesn't let the districts do it. And she argued that the districts will move teachers who are less than invested from their perspective. And so they personally hire the literacy coaches to go into the schools to help with these reading intervention. And they try to pick teachers who understand the data, who understand best learning practices, and who are still really, really passionate, like Flair teachers, about making a difference. And
so then the state has control over who's in the public, like in the districts.
Yeah, the states have taken control in Mississippi of the districts.
But they've shown growth.
They've shown huge growth.
And we know that from research, we know that teachers who are trained in like, in service training where whole group, everybody's learning the same thing. Here's this new strategy. All of the things that like some of the teachers try to do over summer is not as effective as
No.
an actual coach. So that's great that they're supporting that model.
And I read in her article, we'll link it below. She was talking about specifically how teachers need to be leaders and how every teacher wants to do the best and they just need more guidance and support. And it's setting every teacher up for success. And her perspective was too often the districts aren't actually connected enough to that. And so they took it over as
I
a
love
state.
that. So they're not saying it's the teacher's fault.
No.
They're saying, we know you're doing your very best.
Yeah.
I'm going to support you.
Yeah.
With an additional person on your campus who has all these tools to help.
Yeah. And so that article, let me see if I can find it. Did you have it? Do you want to read it? Just the title if anybody wants to read it.
Yeah. So it says, how'd you do it? Mississippi's Superintendent of Education explains state's learning gains.
Yeah. So if you want to read that article, anybody who's listening, it's really fascinating. But she's actually arguing that the districts can promote the wrong, like
that's the scary part. And so they see that. And I mean, we all know that happens. Like people talk about that all the time.
Right.
Like, oh, of course that person's at the district, So, wow.
And they're just calling it, she said it out. Yeah.
Calling it. Yeah.
She's calling it out. What's kind of been said quietly forever. And so she's like, we personally hire every literacy coach. And our target is third grade, and we've got to get those kids reading by third grade. And I just love, it's like a specific goal, it's measurable, it's targetable, there's data, and then she puts the resources behind it. But there's some problems, of course, because the state now is interfering what is usually a local thing.
Right. So then that's a big issue.
But with Mississippi being 50th in education a decade ago, and now coming up, so making such drastic gains, I think what we're seeing is, what I get out of this is the districts need to be held accountable too. So I started arguing, well, maybe the districts need to decide who promotes and who doesn't promote. But there's a problem with that argument. And I think that one of the big problems with that argument is that who says the districts aren't just going to push people through so they don't have to spend money on getting people getting kids where they need to be?
Or they're not seen as lower performing because they're holding back so many kids. Like, what's going on? Why are you holding all these kids back? And so they're going to feel like they have a certain quota to meet, kind of like
instead of we're holding them.
Rates and
Oh, I like that. So that's a big aha moment. We need to stop seeing retention, and maybe, I don't know about suspension. That's another debate.
That's a whole other.
But
that's another.
Yeah. Okay, but that's my aha moment. What we definitely learned from this that we can agree on is we need to stop letting people practice a skill as a problem. It's no worries.
It's not. It's just something they need extra work. And we know that with learning anything, it takes some people longer than others. And
me with Spanish.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I've tried to learn Spanish like for the last 15 years.
Yeah. If we just will destigmatize it, we could do so much from just.
Right. But and if you tell people that, I've been trying to learn Spanish for 15 years, nobody cares. They're not going to make fun of you or make you feel bad about it. They're like, oh yeah, it's tough to learn another language.
Right.
Or, but if you say, I've been trying to learn to read for 15 years, well, what's wrong with you? Why can't you read? What's going on?
So then my second aha moment from that, I think, is to go back to our kind of debate. I do think parents need to be involved, but I do think the measures need to be really clear, because I am one that would argue being softer on ourselves and our kids is not the answer. I don't think.
And I think what would help with that is if the data was put in a way that, or presented in a way to parents so that they could actually understand what it meant. Because, as educators, we're really
Yep.
guilty
Yep.
of using all the acronyms, using all of this information, all these technical terms, and in a way that we expect parents to know what we're talking about, and they don't.
Yeah.
We see that with our IEP meetings all the time. And
Yeah.
parents don't know what their rights are because they don't want to look like they don't understand.
Even the way we give them how they can opt out of the test without being able to opt out of the test, and all that kind of stuff is written. And a lot of our parents don't even speak English. And then the Spanish translations are also very tech talky, right? They're very laden with high vocabulary words and confusing language.
Yeah.
So that undermines
I
an
think
honest
that would help. Like,
conversation.
if
Yeah.
we as parents, if we really truly understood what the concerns were, not just that my child is not reading at grade level, like what specifically does that mean?
Yeah.
And have I had a chance at home to work on these skills? Like, has there been any communication or packets at home, or like the kids always get those little reading books?
Yeah.
And I only saw those little reading books that they do the practice reading when we were on Zoom, because normally they stay at school, right? And they do
Yeah.
all the instruction at school. But
Yeah.
for these kids, like if the parents were seen as a partner, I think that would change things.
And
Which,
Candace,
like we were when we were on Zoom.
didn't you read that they were communicating the data to parents throughout the
They
year?
were communicating the data. Well, that's in that law. It says that there needs to be a notice. So I don't know what exactly that means. Like,
I'm all about,
if it's just, hey,
that.
your kid's underperforming,
Yeah.
or if it's like they're underperforming, but these are things that you can do at home to support
Yeah.
them, which, I'm sure schools are doing that.
Yeah.
Because
But
what
we got to
teacher
get better.
wouldn't?
We got to get better.
Yeah. But if parents really understood, then I think that them having a say in that would be more respected.
I love it. Okay. So I say you win the debate. I say parents get more involved and have more connection. But I also think that districts need to get really clear about what's expected. And I kind of think the state, in the case of Mississippi, won coming down on the districts and saying,
They did. That's amazing.
yeah, saying you're not just going to promote dead weight because
we need actual coaches that can help.
Yeah, real coaches. We need to empower teachers as leaders. To use that over and over again, teachers as leaders, which I love because that's like also
I
horse
love
trading.
that. That's us.
Yeah, I love it. It's like flair, and it's also like horses. You don't train or break them anymore. You show leadership. And I love that because I want to get rid of the idea of classroom management and go into classroom leadership and how we can all be leaders.
Shared leadership in the
Yeah,
classroom.
yeah.
Like, how empowering is that for your students?
Yeah.
To know they have a say.
But I love just communicating it and saying to the parents, like, your kids are going to have to compete in this world with AI and climate change and all this stuff. And we want them to have a job, and we care about them, and we don't want them to be in prison. And this is why we're doing this. Help us,
Yeah. And I feel like if that were made very clear, that would solve a lot of the challenges. Like, we would get a lot more kids at grade level if they knew you could be held back, first of all.
Yeah.
Actually do it. And you see like history of it actually being done.
Yeah.
It's not just an empty threat.
Yep.
And this is why we're holding kids back.
Yeah. And it means something. And I love it because it says, see, this is why I really think districts need to do it. It says there are consequences for your action. So by the time they get to 8th grade, if they destroy the bathroom or ruin my chairs or whatever thing that is on vogue on TikTok,
whatever, yeah,
there's consequences for my action. They will catch me. Things will happen. And I think I don't blame anybody for this because we're all tired and overloaded. And so kids are taking advantage of our exhaustion a little bit. But if we start at the younger grades, establishing.
And they see there's a consequence. And And the consequences there because we're trying to help you be successful as an adult.
Yeah.
I think that's the biggest piece.
And maybe we're contradicting ourselves a little bit because it's not a consequence. We just want them to practice again. But we're basically just saying, so I think maybe we do want to not say it's a consequence, but maybe we're saying do it again till you learn the skill, do it again till you learn the skill. And then if something bad, if they do something behaviorally, they need to do more repair, I guess, or something. Because see, that's how it tricks us. And then we end up back in the consequence brain and it shouldn't be.
I know. And it's so ingrained.
It's so, look at that.
There. Yeah. That we just naturally go to that. And it's not a bad thing. You just need more time.
Yeah. And so really separating academic practice. So there's our final aha moment. Really separating academic practice from behaviors. Understanding it's fine. Stop assuming that just because you're a certain age means your brain has matured in a certain way. We don't assume that about body height. We don't walk around and be like, oh, you've hit your growth spurt, so you're going to do this. And you haven't hit your growth spurt, so you're going to do this.
Yeah.
The brain's the same. And so I think it's really weird that we have these arbitrary ages. I mean, it makes sense historically, but maybe we can move past it now.
Yeah. Because
thank you.
Be a better way.
Right. Yeah. So we need to know in the comments below, what do you think? Should we be holding kids back at all? Do you agree?
And should we hold them back in 3rd grade? When
yeah.
You're 9? Is that appropriate?
Maybe we keep going with it. Maybe the argument is,
should we hold them back before high school?
That's what. Yeah, 8th. That would be interesting. Oh,
I wonder what we think about that. Because that's when 8th to 9th grade, ooh, what a change for these kids.
9th grade is hard.
It's a shift.
Wow. See, that's powerful. Because how different is the 8th grade year going to be if they know they could be there another year?
I wonder.
But if you did it all the way along, so it could be any grade you have to repeat because you're just doing it for practice. So then under that mindset, it should be no big deal. Like, okay, you had to repeat 3rd, you had to repeat 5th, I had to repeat 8th. If you don't do it, you don't do it. And now we have actual consequences for every set of teachers.
But not consequences.
For them to do the
teachers.
For them to do the work though.
Okay.
So what I was going to say with that, I was going to finish that and say it's not a behavioral thing, but there are a lot of teachers who have students who refuse to do any work for them.
Yeah. Because they know they're not going to be held back.
So they won't even try at all. And so in that way,
they know that that's a possibility. Maybe I should do some work so that I don't have to do this again.
That would alleviate a lot of frustration for teachers.
I think so. Yeah, definitely.
All right, tell us what you think in the comments. Thanks for hanging out with us.
Love to know your thoughts.
Should students be held back at all? I say yes. What do you say?
I say yes with exception.
With parent support and our 5 exceptions.
With parent support, yeah.
Have a great day. Bye.
All right, bye everyone.